It's Sunday morning and Sunday school. I'm uh, I'm dressed as a beatnik today. Actually, I'm dressed like a choreographer. Chaps who did taps. They're not tapping anymore. They're doing choreography. Heps who did steps. They're not stepping anymore. They're doing choreography. Okay, yes. I, yes, I lost a bet. Anyway, it is Sunday school, and uh, the reason I've got my dad's old Masonic Bible. There it is, Clifford Ernest DuQuette. Okay, he got this Bible presented to him when he was raised to the third degree uh, in 1948, the year I was born. It's really a cool Bible. And today's talk is titled, But Masons Love the Bible. I just want to show you a few of the highlights of this thing because there's gorgeous, gorgeous pictures in it. Isn't that gorgeous? And every Masonic altar, the altar of oath, has three candles beside it. Usually they're placed triangularly about it, but that would be a perfect candelabra for the first degree of Kabbalistic initiation, corresponding to the three mother letters of the Hebrew alphabet. And this is called the altar of oath. And what you see on that altar are three things. You got the volume of the sacred law, and sometimes actually referred to as the Bible in Masonic lectures and things. And then the square and the compass, or the compasses. Those are the three great lights of Masonry, and that's another reason for the three candles there. And but I got to show you some of these other pictures. Oh, and here's an illustration there of the Blue Lodge of Masonry, and then here it has the concordant body of the Scottish Rite degrees too. My dad was also a 32nd degree Mason. Also got all those degrees in 1948 also. This Bible's falling apart, but what good is it if I'm not showing it and stuff? Look at that picture of King Solomon's temple. And the brazen thing, the Holy of Holies with the Ark of the Covenant, and a hey. And let's see if they got a couple other things here. Maybe I can find it, and maybe I can't. But let's see. Ooh. Anyway, there's wonderful illustrations. The reason I'm doing this, it's Sunday school, and usually you think of Sunday schooly type things in the Bible and such. And I want to talk about, but Masons love the Bible. Now, I'm not a Christian, and I was, my family was sort of nominally uh, Methodist. Yeah, we were Methodists officially, I guess. And uh, my mother was sort of a evangelical type, although it wasn't called that in those days. In those days, it was called Holy Roller. Okay, uh, came from sort of a Pentecostal background, but not officially Pentecostal. And my dad was, for all intent and purposes, I guess we would say he was an agnostic. Um, uh, but because he was a Freemason, he was obliged to self-identify as someone who believed in a supreme being. Okay, because Masons, uh, you can't be an atheist. Okay, you have to b- believe or profess a belief in some kind of superior intelligence in the cosmos. Um, but that was enough for my mom to think that he was an atheist, and she also always told my brother and me, "Your dad's God is Darwin." And Dad went, you know. But but anyway, now when I was raised to the third degree at Long Beach Lodge number 327, um, I was presented uh, a beautiful brand new blue Masonic Bible myself. Uh, but I was lucky enough that my lodge was recognized the fact that Masons should take their oaths on the holy book, the volume of the sacred law that's sacred to them. So if you're a Muslim and you join the Masons, you take it on the Quran. And in those days, in California, the Book of the Law was Crowley's Book of the Law that I've been reading the last couple of days, the introduction to. Uh, I took all my Masonic oaths on the Book of the Law, Liber Al Vel Legis, and I had uh, a beautiful copy of the facsimile of the Equinox of the Gods, which not only had the Book of the Law in it, it had the facsimile of the Book of the Law in it, and they put the square and compass right there on the Book of the Law, and uh, I took all my Masonic oaths on the Book of the Law, which is as it should be. Uh, uh, but I don't believe in the Bible in the way that most Masons in my lodge hold it sacred. I certainly the Bible is uh, a sacred text as a religious uh, document, but I don't view it as history. Okay, and I think that there's something much more wonderful going on than can be uh, cornered and restricted to one particular religion or faith. But the same could be said about the Tao Te Ching, or the Quran, or Rumi. In chapter 9 of my Key to Solomon's Key, is this the lost symbol of Masonry? Don't worry, I'm not going to read the whole chapter to you. But chapter 9 starts off with the title, "But Masons Love the Bible." Now, I go through a great deal of uh, effort to talk about the non-historicity of certain tales of the Old Testament, including the legendariness of King Solomon's temple, as opposed to the non-history of King Solomon's temple. In other words, that's section leading up to the return of the captives of Nebuchadnezzar in about 530 BC. All of that up to that point, the narrative that we're used to hearing was not history. Okay, it was legendary history. It was religious history, fabled history. Okay, and I go through great lengths to respectively look at it from that point of view with scholarly references and such. And but this chapter is "But Masons love the Bible." Okay, 2 epigraphs. I do not feel obliged to believe that the same God who has endowed us with sense, reason, and intellect has intended us to forego their use. Galileo Galilei. It ain't those parts of the Bible that I can't understand that bother me. It's the parts that I do understand. Mark Twain, who was a proud Freemason. I realize it's difficult, if not impossible, for many people today to even entertain the idea that the Bible may not be all they believe it to be. The Bible has become the most popular book in the world. Today it is universally revered by the faithful as the inerrant Word of God. It occurs to very few of us to question either its holiness or its authenticity. In a world that has gone hellishly mad, we've always taken comfort in the fact that the faith of our fathers is the one thing that remains solid and unchanging. For most of us, it'd be unthinkable to suggest that perhaps for the last 2,500 years, the faith of our fathers has been one of the very big reasons why our world has gone hellishly mad. On the surface, Masonry appears to be vigorously at odds with this worldview. After all, the Bible is very important to Masonry. As chaplain, I was chaplain for several years. As chaplain of my lodge, I delivered the following charge to the newly initiated apprentice Mason. Now, this is all monitorial, so I'm not giving away any secret things here, okay? Quote, as a Mason, you are to regard the volume of the sacred law as the great light in your profession, to consider it as the unerring standard of truth and justice, and to regulate your actions by the divine precepts it contains. Unquote. The book I refer to as the volume of the sacred law in this particular section of the ritual is in most cases a large Bible that is set upon the altar where the candidate has just taken his solemn oath to the fraternity. And of course, for Thelemites, California at that time, that was the book of the law. I say in most cases because not all Masons are Christians or Jews. Indeed, as we learned earlier, candidates for Masonic initiation are not asked to identify themselves as members of any particular faith, and need only profess a belief in a supreme being and a form of afterlife. At their initiation, these candidates are obligated on whatever holy book they revere as their own volume of the sacred law. While the term volume of the sacred law is employed most often in Masonic ritual, the words, quote, Holy Bible, are used in the ritual when describing the book as one of the three great lights in Masonry. The other two great lights, as I pointed out, being the most recognizable symbols of the craft, the square and the compass. Obviously, there appears to be a conflict of traditions here. It would seem at first glance that such reverence for the Holy Bible would put Masonry at odds with a hypothetical temple secret that threatens to shoot a very big hole in the Bible's credibility. Credibility is history, anyway. Let's look more closely at what the charge says and how it says it. A Mason is to regard the volume of the sacred law as the great light in his profession, and the unerring standard of truth and justice. He is counseled to regulate his actions by the divine precepts it contains. These are admirable instructions, and I am certainly not arguing that the Bible, or one's own volume of the sacred law, is not a rich and sacred source of spiritual inspiration and guidance. They do not, however, suggest that a Mason is in any way obligated to accept the volume of the sacred law as an objective history book. Moreover, it has been my observation that Masonic lectures that employ readings from the Bible or make allusions to Bible stories are entirely self-referential lessons of Masonry and completely free from sectarian doctrines and interpretations. It may be true that the majority of Masons believe the Bible is historically accurate, but they've come to that conclusion not because of anything they learned from Masonry, but because of their pre-existing religious convictions. There's something else at work here, something that struck me like a setting maul to the head the evening I was raised to the sublime degree of Master Mason. I'm breaking no vows of secrecy when I share with you that the ceremony of this degree revolves around the story of King Solomon and the building of his temple. Some of it is taken directly from the Bible and tells the story of King David of Israel and his son Solomon, who with the aid of his neighbor, King Hiram of Tyre, and the master builder Hiram Abiff, built the magnificent temple of God. Most of it, however, concerns a patently non-biblical story, a dramatic myth unique to Masonry. It is the story of Hiram Abiff, the master builder, who, as Solomon's temple was nearing completion, was accosted by 3 workmen of the temple, who prematurely demanded from him the secret word of a master mason, a word that would guarantee them the freedom to travel as they will to foreign countries and earn master's wages. Hiram, of course, refused and was murdered. Shocked at their foul deed, the ruffians hurriedly concealed the Grand Master's body in the rubbish heap of the temple. Later, they removed it and reburied it elsewhere. Eventually, the villains were apprehended and brought before King Solomon, where they confessed and were summarily executed. Solomon and King Hiram of Tyre proceeded to locate the grave, raise the body, and bring it back to Jerusalem to finally be interred beneath the Holy of Holies of the temple. It's a wonderful legend and reminiscent of the story of Osiris, the dying god myth of a score of ancient cultures and mystery traditions. However, it is a story that is found nowhere in the Bible, and certainly not believable from a historic point of view. God, an unclean dead body interred inside the Holy of Holies of the Jewish temple? I think not. Not bloody likely. Still, the enactment of this drama is Masonry's most sacred moment and is presented by the ritual team with profound, almost religious solemnity. In a subtle way, the ceremony of the third degree gives the new Mason permission to meditate, perhaps for the first time in his life. Meditate on the sacred mythological truths existing outside the strict confines of the biblical narrative. For others who meditate on a possible Masonic Templar connection, the ceremony also suggests, in a not-so-subtle way, that perhaps something was buried beneath the Holy of Holies of the temple. Not the fictional Temple of Solomon, but the real ruins of 1st century BCE Temple of Herod the Great. Modern Templar treasure hunters even suggest the Masonic myth points to something beneath Scotland's Rosslyn Chapel, whose foundational footprint is said to be scaled to that of Herod's temple. With this supreme ceremony, Masonry goes to great lengths to draw the candidate's attention to the Bible, especially to the biblical story of David and Solomon, then almost immediately diverts his attention to a dramatic, non-biblical version of the story, almost as if to say, you know, those Bible stories of David and Solomon and King Solomon's temple, there's something beneath those stories. You might want to dig into it. Masonry urges her members, all her members, to use the volume of the sacred law as the great light in your profession. The question few of us ask, however, is when does a professional stonemason most need light? The answer is obvious. Masons need light when they dig, when they excavate, when they explore, when they seek out and bring to light those things hidden beneath the surface. A few pages back, we learned what we find when we dig beneath the surface of the story of King Solomon and the building of the temple. There is another Bible story that Masonry goes out of its way to draw our attention to. A story surrounding the events that followed the destruction of Solomon's temple. It is the tale of the capture and relocation of the children of Israel to Babylon and their return to Jerusalem after 70 years to rebuild Jerusalem and the so-called Second Temple. Let's now take a moment to examine this story and see what we find when we turn the Bible's light upon itself and excavate below the surface. And that story goes on in the key to Solomon's key. Is this the lost symbol of masonry? And that's the end of Sunday school. I found in the Bible, in this, my dad's Masonic Bible, a picture. I posted it on Facebook. I think I've got better pictures where we see my dad's face. But this is my dad. He's 61 years old. And this is just a couple months before he died. And that is our son, our 51-year-old son, Jean-Paul. Now, Dad was very ill in the last years of his life, but when he heard Constance was pregnant with Jean-Paul, he stayed alive long enough to take this picture. And he was a proud 32nd degree Mason until the day he died. And I was, when I became chaplain of my lodge in Long Beach, which was his old lodge too, I had the privilege to perform the graveside service. It was several years after his death, though, because the Masons actually failed to show up at his funeral. They had the dates wrong or something. So just almost the moment I became chaplain of my lodge, I arranged with the master of the lodge for us to give him the proper graveside Masonic service. So anyway, that's a pretty wild Sunday school, wasn't it? Until tomorrow, continue to be good to yourself, be good to each other. Do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law. Love under will.